Welcome to the continuation of this series, where I sculpt Perseus and Medusa in a dramatic scene, inspired by the Greek mythology. Let's keep going. Using a little dollop of liquid clay to adhere the amphora jars to their position in the lower right corner foreground. Okay, finally, let's make Perseus and Medusa. First, we'll skin both. To do this, I roll a long thin clay sausage, which is then pressed onto the already posed metal paperclip skeletons, like applying a skin. By skinning Perseus in two roughly equal pieces, left side and right side, I can make small adjustments in the pose on the fly. Next, I add clay skin to Medusa's T-pose. I include the male and female clay guide forms, made earlier, to approximate the physical size and shape. Also, the clay sketch figures, from the beginning of this sculpt, for the required posture. Please, no pixelation required YouTube. Medusa's sketch body in the scene, positioned where her snaky head explosion will occur. Give her a snake scarf for good measure. A very long snake scarf. The first of many. Are some more large, long special hairdo snakes. I have given each of these snaky sprouts a different motivation and posture, something akin to independent mood and action, such as pondering, scouring, posing, searching, scenting, existing, discovering, and perhaps snoozing. Okay, team, finally, let's get on with the real star of the show, Medusa. Perseus is a super lad, with lots of fantastic stuff to sculpt. However, the cursed lady will need to make quite an entrance for the scene to work and the sculpt to pop. Especially at the scale I am working. Not that the series thumbnail doesn't give it all away. Anyway, good viewers, you came here for the process, right? So here we go. I rolled a long thin clay sausage and applied it just like with Perseus, pressing it over Medusa's already posed metal paperclip skeleton. Next, I applied tiny pieces of clay, bit by bit, to build her basic body silhouette. Each body is no more than 5 centimeters tall. Okay, that's a wrap on another Medusa iteration. More to come for her. Now, to iterate on Perseus's basic form. Something worth considering is, this sculpt is inspired by the ancient and historical texts in the public domain. In the earlier texts, Perseus slays Medusa before she can even open her eyes. Yes, invisible, hovering Perseus literally beheads Medusa with his godblade as the cursed snake woman sleeps. Even the Gorgon sisters, Stheno and Euryale, barely get a chance to react. I want to sculpt more than an invisible person, chopping the head off an oblivious, prone creature before the slayer flies off. Although that is an interesting challenge. As you will see, I'm not an expert anatomical sculptor, but I'm human, last time I checked, so I will give it a solid layperson's go. The clay figures you see here are, at least 4 stages of the sculpting journey. First, anatomical scale guides. Second, pose sketches. Third, skin paperclip skeletons. And fourth, final figures, eventually. I gradually layered on tiny clay bits until I got the general Perseus body form and pose envisioned for this quest. So, my vision, inspired by the texts, is as follows. Up until the actual moment, the exact composition of the Gorgon showdown was largely unknown to Perseus. However, he may have pondered, dreamed, or imagined the threat, confrontation, and presence of the legendary snake child born of powerful sea gods, forces, and Ceto, as well as the terrain, lair, temple, dwelling, nest. It was with the later telling of the tale by Ovid that Medusa became a pretty maiden cursed by Athena, which bore a tested relationship to Poseidon in Athena's temple. How about the fear, thrill, sweat, tension, timing, positioning? Invisible or not, how would you feel going up against a legend? The original text suggests, when Perseus flew high above the Isle of the Dead, he realized Medusa and her sisters were sleeping. Up until that moment, it was Perseus's intuition, imagination, tales told, visions, and experience shared, that prepared him for the task at hand. Now he witnessed it firsthand. I at least wanted the sculpture to hint at a possible dramatic showdown. It could be deemed, from the ancient texts, that beyond all the purple gear and top-tier advice Perseus received, that his personal heroic achievement is the analysis, strategy, and cunning, tactics, and courage to strike a swift and certain blow, and be home in time for cornflakes. Not to forget, a rendezvous with Atlas, aiding Andromeda, and reminding Polydectes, to name a few other pressing matters, which required efficiency. Perhaps. Despite infinite possibilities, this is my sculpted scene on this occasion. I hope you enjoy it for what it is. Here I bend large paperclips as prime hair snakes, curling, curving, corkscrewing, climbing, and creeping across the temple terrain. The snakes weave betwixt standing architecture, debris, gnarled foliage, and the weedy bath, and the figures of past petrifications. Many adventurers met their match here. Once I positioned the wire snakes, I set about skinning them with clay, similar to the other figures. You may notice, at the lower center of the scene, in the bath pool, is a kneeling figure. This is a sketch for one of several other adventurers whom have ventured fatefully into the drama. The positioning of the large snakes gives them each a duty and mini-scene within a scene of their own, which will become the whole. Although Medusa pops and ponders, and Perseus prays and prepares, I want the viewer's eyes to be drawn, exploring, to other aspects of this piece of art. I'm sure I could sculpt the invisible Perseus and sleeping Gorgons, and I'm sure some talented human will. Good luck, fellow sculptors. Each primary snake gains its presence as I apply the polymer clay to the coppery wire. Although the figures are made from 2 standard paperclips, each big snake is approximately 1 slightly larger paperclip. Here she is, curled up with one of her serpentine hair strands, which together with the many other strands, gives muscle, power, mobility, and lift to her core bipedal form. Medusa is not flying or floating, we'll leave that to Perseus, but she is physically elevated and escorted by her supposed curse of curses. I play around with the exact angles, undulations, and depth within the relief. Remember, this piece goes inside a shadow frame, and I want the viewer to be able to see a literal different perspective, depending on their own tilt and shift. At least that's an aspiration. I'm no master sculptor, this is what it is. I swap out the sketch figure with the near final figure. What a difference! In hindsight, I do wish I had used clean super Sculpey beige throughout. In my attempt to save clay by using scraps and muddled clay, I caused a few spots on the scene to have a mottled blue and yellow hint. In this shot you can see the composition coming together, the many details to draw the eye. You see the corner space, with the disc labeled, Sun? Well, that will feature the only deliberately vibrant colored clay. This particular cursed coil, shaped like a tornado, swirls and curls around Medusa's T-posed body to show the dynamics and strength of her heady friends, while adding a little more subtle support of her posture. Silence from me, let's just have some light music and sculpting for a moment. Rolled out a long clay sausage, then chopped it into several mini sausages and clustered them together. Can you guess what for? This part of Medusa's mane features tighter, less rampant snakes than those roaming big ones. This bunch also gives Medusa's body and head added stability and the illusion of depth. So, this lump of short-head snakes, plus the bottom tip of the snake tornado, are the balance and pivot points for the Medusa figure within the scene. Tidying up the snaky bits here and there. I think it's looking pretty sound. Mind you, at this point, and without Medusa's bipedal body element in position, this explosive cluster of tendrils looks like a unique creature in and of itself. Then Perseus held the shield so that the Gorgonian shapes were reflected in its polished face, and very slowly he floated down and down, till he was within striking distance, and Perseus loathed them as he watched them in the mirror. Medusa is not only described as a monster, but also as a victim of the gods, particularly in later sources like Ovid. Her transformation from beauty to monstrosity serves as a potent symbol of power, punishment, and victimization in Greek mythology. I use a lollipop stick to spread liquid clay on the sides, filling gaps, strengthening, and unifying the piece. Now for the fabled Gorgon bronze aspects. In Hyginus's Fabulae text, circa 2nd century BCE, Hyginus echoes descriptions of the Gorgons as having monstrous, metallic features like bronze hands and golden wings. It is stated that, unlike her sisters, Medusa does not have wings. So, I imbued the figure with this distinct feature. However, for some reason, rather than sculpt the claws, I envisioned using some bronze gold-colored metal paperclips for Medusa's hands and feet, and chose to exaggerate their gnarly, tumorous bestial ferocity, rather than have them manicured. There are many ways to make a face. For this method, I hold a ball stylus with a tip the rough size of the skull I want to create. Roll a small clay ball, and press that onto the tip. Then use another stylus's neck and tip to press 3 horizontal line indents, eye-line, below the nose, and below the lips, for contours and facial detail positioning. Plus some scalpel work to resize and shape accordingly. It's efficient for sketching faces quickly. The 3 horizontal and 2 vertical line indents gives a forehead and brow, nose tip and upper lip, cheekbones, lower lip and chin, and mouth contour lines, with 4 additional presses to the sides of the clay ball required to create the temples and the cheek sink. A little tidying, and you have a quick face. And then you work on your eyes, nostrils, ears, with some wrinkling for aging, etc. Slice some forehead off here. I've enjoyed just pumping out mock sketch heads like this, and may do a video just on that. If you would like to see a casual demo tutorial on this head technique, and the rapid sketch variety it can give, post in the comments. Now for the shield. First, I roll a clay ball and press it into a dome disc, flatten the edge a little, then press a line around it to create a lip. I want the interior of the shield to be smooth and untextured because I am considering adding a mirroring material, such as glass or paint, to the inside of the shield for the magical effect. That way, the viewer of the art, if they look at just the right angle, can see a hint of Medusa's face and body in the mirror shield. To be confirmed. But where to draw the line, because at this stage, Perseus is also invisible, so the interpretation of his appearance in this version of my sculpture is on that grey line between text and imagination. For the godly Greek blade, I rolled a clay sausage, pressed it onto a paperclip to retain rigid structure, then scalpel cut it to the desired Greek Xiphos sword shape. Finished with a hilt, and later a small pommel. I'll do a similar leaf-type blade style with spears later. It makes you wonder, going by the older texts, how the showdown would have gone, if Medusa, or her sisters, were alerted to Perseus's presence before he struck the fateful blow. What do you think? I've added the sword and shield to the figure for posing. Left-handed or right-handed for the shield. Shield in the right hand looks pretty cool and dynamic, as if Perseus is going in fast for the kill. But that is not what the original text describes. It's anticipation of the moment, with the actual beheading stated in very few words. I prefer the shield in Perseus's left hand, and held more openly, so that from his position in the isometric scene, he can believably be looking at the reflection of Medusa. Plus, this shield position requires Perseus to not be looking directly at his target, so add some dramatic tension to the scene. A simple flattened ball of clay, pressed onto his head, forms the base of the cap of Hades. Earlier texts describe it as a cap and a helmet. So, I have chosen to approximate two soldiers' helm types, a more extravagant Corinthian, plus a simpler Illyrian, but aiming for an overall simple leather Tannis-style cap. I cut two small flaps to cover the ears and jaw, plus a shallow peacock plume running from brow to the nape of his neck. A few tool presses here and there. The goatskin cabeces sack was strapped and slung over his shoulder like a satchel, ready to hold the lethal head of Medusa, as effective when attached or severed from her monstrous body. To create the lower portion of his chiton tunic, I added a slim sheet of clay around his waist and blended it into his body. I fluted and filleted the chiton a bit to give it volume. Perseus will be hovering by the power of his will and winged shoes while readying his adamantine sword and mirror shield. The scale of figures and detail is quite small. To give the chiton garment more volume, texture, and motion, I rolled another small sheet of clay, folded loops into it, then cut and shaped it to Perseus's body. Pronounced chiton. An ancient Greek garment worn by men and women. A little bit of quick blending here and there, bringing the costume together. Some texture, flow, and the shield. I adjusted his feet here. Add the head back to the body, then tweak the posture, make minor adjustments. My humanoid proportions are usually a bit off, but these seem okay. Now that Perseus's head is adorned with the Helm of Darkness, I make a few tiny detail changes, like giving him a close shave to merge the helm with the facial features. To be honest, it looks like a World War I aviator's cap and goggles. But at least it is a cap. Go with the flow, let the art emerge. Blend his neck and head together. A couple of little clay sausages for feet, slip them on the metal pegs, and blend them into his ankles. These form a base, which I will adjust accordingly later, because I need to add the details of Hermes' wonderful winged sandals, the Talaria. You see Medusa at the top of the picture? She has been oven-baked. Let me show you how I added the last few snakes to her head before the baking. So, I tidied up the general form, merged lines around the neck and head, unified the details. These smaller, subtler snakes enabled me to attune Medusa to the rest of the scene, which we'll see in the final episode. With her head complete, I added these small clay sausages one at a time, composing and blending them naturally onto her head and shoulders. Well, as natural as a woman with snaky tentacles for hair can be. Hopping back to Perseus for some final touches. Just enough detail required on the fingers, gripping the shield strap, readying the blade. You see Medusa in the background there? I think she turned out splendid. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. That's a wrap for this penultimate episode. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, please hit the like button, post a comment, and click subscribe. To see more of what the channel has to offer, check out our other videos and hit the notification bell for future releases. Visit our social media for insights into the creation process. You can view the episode content notes and find out more about the channel in the video description. If you want to support the channel, please visit our Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, or YouTube memberships. Thank you.